los héroes y protagonistas de este ecosistema deportivo. No solo es necesario para quienes nos leen, también para el medio y el periodista lo va a posicionar de nuevo en el lugar en el que se ha llegado a dudar, especialmente desde la óptica de un aficionado que se siente, descubre algo nuevo de su equipo, el atleta puede creer que es algo personal, contra destapar algunas de las dudas verdades. El periodismo deportivo a encontrar las respuestas que la sociedad es en estos momentos complicados responsables. Gracias.
Gracias, Carlos. And after America, the alphabet is moving up to Asia, to India. Mr. Sandeep Dwivedi has been working for the Indian cricket. Several years ago, he was awarded with India's most prestigious honor of sports journalist, the Ramnath Goenka Award. Mr. Dwivedi, your time.
Hello everyone, I am Sandeep, sports editor of the Indian Express, a leading English daily with close to 25 million readers here. I live in New Delhi. I stay not far from the stadium which hosted the 1982 Asian Games and the 2010 Commonwealth Games. My city also has an iconic cricket stadium that's next to the ruins of a Mughal era fort that's actually very close to my home. We as a nation are obsessed with one game, which is cricket. For people who don't understand cricket, I'll just give you the scale. Just think of Brazil's love for football and multiply it by 6. Why 6 is, if you ask, here's the maths. Brazil's population is close to 200 million, I think, yeah? We are 1.20 billion. To understand our scale, first imagine 1 billion people and then add an entire Brazil to it. That's India for you. You don't see many of us on the Olympic podium, but trust me, in case you include cricket, you might see us much more often. But in other sports, we are improving. Our best ever medals tally is 6. That was at the 2012 London Games. We are now world class in shooting, wrestling, badminton, but the Olympic top 10 is still a distant dream. But medals or no medals, we remain a very sport-loving nation. We love watching sports. And take my word, Manchester United Football Club would have more fans in Mumbai than in Manchester. It's because of this mass following that sports journalism is a preferred career choice for many in our country. It isn't just a dream job that can get you the best seat at the stadium, it can pay your bills also. But a few months back, when the virus struck, things changed. When the majority of the world is recovering from the virus, in India the surge is relentless. The death count is increasing in New Delhi where I stay, and we live in constant fear. The stadium near my home, where I have covered countless games and have always looked forward to going, isn't the place it once used to be. It has been converted into a center for corona patients. Hospital beds at stadium, that for me, unfortunately, best symbolizes the present health of sports. No one is immune to the pandemic. The newspapers are shrinking. Every day I hear about sports journalists losing jobs. Never ever was there a more urgent need to stress the importance of sports. We need to make the world understand that the tide will surely turn and we need to remind everyone that the relevance of sport is a time-tested reality. Once the virus is tamed, we will need sports for sure. Sports is something which connects people. It is an icebreaker for millions of socially awkward youth. For example, a Mo Salah gives an Indian and an Englishman, an Egyptian, or a Malaysian a common language. We, as sports journalists, need to remind the world about the post-war 1948 Olympic Games and how it changed the mood of a nation. We need to retell the stories of the racehorse called Sea Biscuit or the greatest ever cricketer, Sir Donald Bradman, and how they brought cheer among the masses during the Great Recession of the 1930s. For the message to spread, we will need the collective strength of the sport journalistic community. And that initiative can't be just a signature campaign or a petition on change.org. Journalists must do more for other journalists. A financial first aid is fine, it is necessary. But sports journalists need a credible platform to be heard. In a nutshell, they need jobs. Maybe a constantly updated dashboard on the AIPS website informing out of work sports journalists of employment opportunity could be a good start. This unprecedented situation can also threaten something that is very precious to all of us, our independence. Of late, a disturbing trend has surfaced. Sports officials and player agents have increasingly tried to monetize the access to the star players. Freewheeling interviews are a rarity these days. Most interactions these days are conducted in the presence of media managers, agents, or both. Such interviews end the minute an uncomfortable question gets asked. We need to tell the stakeholders that the regime of tight control is pushing the athletes into an echo chamber that is cut off from the reality. Healthy criticism ensures healthy athletic ecosystem. In the corona impacted economic environment and the shrinking job market, can we as sports journalists challenge the officials and the agents? Well, I don't know. I'm not sure about it. Don't get me wrong. These officials and agents could be our next employers. Can we stand up to them? That's the decision we have to take. The road ahead is very tough, and it was really thoughtful for the AIPS for organizing this talk. There is an urgent need for a dialogue with the sports body. The wall of mistrust needs to fall. Like the football team that is trailing, we all need to go in a huddle. We need to come up with ideas to survive this personal and professional attack on us by the virus. Let's hope for a last minute winner from the sports journalist. Thanks a lot, friends, for listening.
And thank you very much. When you know about someone who is a member of the IOC Press Committee, it is a great honor and achievement. This man I will introduce to you is also of AIPS jury for the AIPS Awards and now leads Kyoto coverage of the Olympic Games in Tokyo. He is also my friend, Mr. Shinsuke Kobayashi.
Thank you, Jura. Dear friends, colleagues, when the Tokyo 2020 Olympic and Paralympic Games were postponed until the summer of 2021, it was quite shocking for many of my fellow journalists in Japan. An Olympic editor in my news agency, who had been working hard since the Games were awarded to Tokyo in 2013, lamented, "This is like being told to run for another lap in a long distance race when you were turning the last curve into the final stretch." And there is even a possibility that the Games might not take place at all, and he can't reach the finish line if the situation with the pandemic does not improve. Not only for the athletes, but also for journalists, this is a rather difficult to cope with mentally. I suspect many of us kind of lost focus a little after the postponement was announced. Of course, it was not only the Olympics and Paralympics that were affected. All the sporting events came to a standstill. No baseball, no football, or no sumo wrestling during the months of April and May. There was also an appalling news that a 28-year-old sumo wrestler died from the coronavirus. Sports journalists did not have events to cover and lost the press box to work at. We can only work remotely using phones and the internet. Things started to look a little brighter when the government lifted the state of emergency on May 25th. The professional baseball opened the season on June 19th. The J League resumed on June 27th with matches of J2 and J3, while the top tier J1 will restart on July 4th. However, like anywhere in the world, life is not the same as it was before. We have to live and work under a new standard to prevent the spread of the virus. Both baseball and football were played behind closed doors, and the working conditions of the journalists were far from ideal. The J League set the maximum number of writers who can get into the stadium at 25. This will apply not only to J2 and J3, but also to J1. That means when J1 resumes on this Saturday, there will certainly be some of our colleagues who will not have the accreditation to enter stadiums. Last weekend, in order to keep social distance and minimize contact, journalists were only allowed in the press tribunes. The press working rooms were not in use, and after attending Zoom interviews from the Tribune, they were asked to leave the stadium. They were not given enough time to write their stories at the stadium. In professional baseball, the measures were taken not by the league but by individual teams. Some are more generous to the media, while others put tougher restrictions. The teams with bigger stadiums and larger facilities are more relaxed with the admission of the media. Some teams prepare auxiliary press seat in the stand. We don't know how the policy would change, however, when they start to bring in the spectators to the stadium from July 10th. As a first step, 5,000 fans are allowed to attend each game. Women's professional golf tour also held their first tournament of the season during the last week of June. It was played without spectators and without media. It was not televised either, but the main sponsor of the tournament was determined to hold the event, and this company even paid to create the moving images, which they put on YouTube for free. So print media could follow the action on YouTube, and there were interviews of the players after the rounds using Zoom. We're trying our best to cover sports and present them to our audience with the limited access and limited freedom in this era of COVID-19. We cooperate with the organizers as much as we can. This is an extraordinary time and everyone is not sure what the right solution is. But I think we have to be careful that people do not take advantage of this situation to limit the freedom and the power of the press. The press has been a vehicle to promote sport and increase its popularity for a long time. It publicized the great achievements of athletes and conveyed their message to the public. We explain people what sport can do and its great value. We also keep our eyes on how sport is organized, and we have an important role to criticize when things are not handled properly. It is true that we speak to the fans directly using those tools, or big clubs selling their contents on their own channels. But it is professional analysis of journalists that adds depth to the sports coverage, and storytelling of the sport writers that sheds light on what's happening behind the scenes. And as a watchdog of power and authority, we should never be pushed aside in the post-corona landscape. Thank you.
Arigato, Mr. Kobayashi. After Mr. Kobayashi, we are in Europe, in Italy, in Milano. Of course, we are in studio in Milano, but also the man who's supposed to be with us was editor-in-chief of Gazzetta dello Sport, Mr. Stefano Barigelli. He couldn't make it, but if he couldn't make it, his deputy editor-in-chief, Mr. Pier Vergonzi, can make it, and he will address to us. Welcome, Pier.
Hello, ciao, hello to everybody. Nice to be with you. I'm sorry my editor is not here, but leave me his words. And so, sports has never stopped before, not even during the two wars, but it came to a standstill all over the world because of COVID-19. The restarts we are going through, despite many difficulties, also offer some opportunities that we must be able to seize. First of all, the social function that sport has always had in history, in every age and in every latitude, has now become even more powerful. Any competition from any discipline combines not only the fans but to entire country the message that returning to normal is possible, that the world is now behind us. So, the sooner sport regains its normality, the sooner citizens will have the awareness that normality has been regained by each of them. Even without the public, even with the antivirus measures at the event, it's essential that every discipline push for the return to competition. The postponement of the European football tournament, and especially the Tokyo Olympic Games, have caused a shock that must be overcome. Next year, as we all hope, the vaccine will arrive and the Olympics will be held in a hot year. The Games will go down in history and will have mission only comparable to those of London 1948, which symbolically were the Olympic Games of the rebirth after a terrible war and left million deaths, a war that had divided the world. COVID has not been a war, and instead of dividing the world, it positively united. For example, in the joint international effort to find drugs that can cure and even eradicate it, and also what better way to symbolically represent this the new and hurtful union is not the Olympics Games, which were the first global event, but sport also has another opportunity. The difficulty of lockdown has taught that the selfish race towards the result as the only goal does not make sense. It's like if this month have reset many of our behaviors and some of our beliefs. Going back to how it was before, and if nothing had happened would be the worst of mistake. Sport must also aim to put an athlete back in the center, not the result, not the record or a goal. The press and the media in general must have the same awareness. Telling the exploit is fine, but better if they come together with simple human stories that give us the sense of this period better than a medal won. Our civilization has been wounded. Technique and frantic research are not everything. Indeed, they are nothing without the woman and the man in their sacred centrality. Sport was born to celebrate harmony, not the result. We have to go back to that.